So in order for you to understand the world in which this particular story is taking place, you only need to go back and read the book that comes right before Ruth. Now, I'm not going to do that for you this morning because I just am not. But I'm going to read you the very last verse of Judges because I think it sets the tone for the world that Ruth and Naomi and everybody in this story were living in. So Judges ends with this. In those days there was no king in Israel. All the people did what was right in their own eyes. Gosh, can you imagine how unsophisticated are those people back then? Can you imagine living in a world where everybody did what was right in their own eyes and didn't have anybody to guide them? People in the Old Testament are unsophisticated. Thank goodness we don't live in that world today, right? Anywho, so in order for me to set the scene of Ruth, I'm going to ask you to ask yourself, what would you do if you were Ruth in the story today? Because Ruth is put in a pretty interesting situation in our story. So here's how it goes. The book of Ruth begins with the story of Naomi and her husband. And as you heard in the reading, there was a famine in the land, and so people had to leave. So Naomi and her husband decide to flee the land. They flee, and they go to the country of Moab. And they bring their two sons, Mahlon and Chilion. Imagine for a moment, and I know it's difficult for most people here this morning, but imagine for a moment you all of a sudden are forced with a decision to make. You have to leave your home country. You have to pick up everything that you can carry, only things that you can carry, and you have to go to a completely new culture with different people and different surroundings, and everything is different. No doubt when Naomi heard this news that they've got to leave their land, there was grief. She was sad. She didn't want to leave because everything she had known was going to change. There was grief, but at least Naomi had her husband. At least she had her son. As long as she had her sons and her husband, she was fine. So again, at least Naomi had her husband, of course, until she doesn't. Because we're told that very quickly after they enter Moab, Naomi's husband dies. But she had one thing to cling on to. She may be a widow, but at least she had her two boys with her. And even better, as she's in this foreign land, her boys meet some Moabite women and they marry. And so these two women, Orpah and Ruth, we're just going to call her Oprah because as I see it in front of me, I keep seeing Oprah, so we're going to call her Oprah this morning, but you know who I'm talking about. So Naomi's son's married, and she thinks, okay, well, I'm a widow, but at least I have my sons, and at least they're married, and at least now I know I'll have grandchildren, and I know that our family lineage will continue down the line. Everything's going to be okay. Naomi may not have her husband, but at least she has her sons to take care of her until she doesn't. Because we're told, again, that both of her sons end up dying. And now Naomi is left with no husband and no future, and in the eyes of that culture, no real place to go. She is the lowest in the society. She has lost everything. In fact, she is feeling down in the dumps. Did you know that when she goes back to Bethlehem after today's reading, she goes back, and everybody in the town says, "Isn't that Naomi?" And she says, "No, don't call me that anymore. Call me Mara," which means bitterness. She wants everybody to call her bitter because she thinks God has dealt bitterly with me. All Naomi has are her two daughters-in-law, and they too are widows. So Naomi thinks in her mind, there is no hope, there is no future, there's nobody to take care of us, and she's faced with the reality of what is she going to do. And she gets news that all of a sudden that God has looked with favor upon his children again, and the famine is over, so she decides she's going to go back to Bethlehem, but before she does that, she's going to free her daughters-in-law of having to stay with her. So she says, you need to go back. Go back to your mother's home. I'm no good to you. Life is no good to you. You'll have a much better chance of surviving if you go home to your mother's house and you remarry and you have children and you live happily ever after. But the girls say, no, the ladies say, no, we're not going to do that. Naomi says, you must. She says, may the Lord deal kindly with you. But the daughters refuse to go. Naomi persists. She says, look, I am zero good to you. She says, even if all of a sudden the knight in shining armor were to show up in front of me and I were to fall madly in love with them and we were to have children, even if that happens, you're still not going to be able to marry them because you'll have to wait until they become adults. If you stay with me, you're stuck. You're going to be old and you're going to be a widow just like me and you have no real future. You should go back to your hometown. Have you ever been rejected by a loved one? It hurts, doesn't it? What do you do when you've been rejected by a loved one? For me, I would rather be punched in the stomach by Hulk Hogan and body slammed by Andre the Giant than be rejected by a loved one. Because I know if I'm punched in the stomach and body slammed, at least that pain will eventually subside. But when I'm rejected by a loved one, when a loved one hurts me, when a loved one does something that cuts deep into me, that is the true pain. That's essentially what Naomi is trying to do with her two daughters-in-law. She's trying to reject them. She's trying to get them to go away from her. She's trying to save them, and it comes off as she does not want them around. Now, one of the daughters, again, Oprah, realizes, yeah, you're right. Naomi, there really is no future with you. And I think it's safe to say that Oprah went on to be fine, right? Went to Chicago, had a successful talk show, book deals, soups, everything. Oprah was fine. But the Bible tells us that Ruth clings to Naomi. Ruth tells Naomi, I'm not leaving you. I'm not going anywhere. I think that's what the book of Ruth is all about. It's a story about devotion in the face of rejection, because Naomi kept saying, I'm no good to you. You've got to go. You've got to go. And Naomi says, nope. You're stuck. I'm staying right here. Naomi figures that she's no good to anybody else, so she, in a weird way, tries to reject her daughters-in-law, but Ruth clings to her. Can you think of the people in your life that you cling to? I mean, besides the obvious, right? Children, you cling to your children cling to you. But who is it in your life that you will hold on to no matter what? Even if you go through a season with them in their lives where they try to reject you, and they try to push you away, and they try to give up on you, you still cling to them. You say, no matter what you do, I'm not going anywhere. Even if you won't take my calls, I'll still pray for you. No matter what you do, I'm still there for you. Do you have a story like that? Do you have a relationship like that? Are you in a season with somebody like that right now? Either you're Naomi, where you're trying to get somebody away from you, or you find yourself being Ruth, where you're saying, you're not going to get rid of me. I'm not going to stop loving you. I'm not going to stop caring about you. One of my good friends from high school has a story like that, and I wish he was here to share it with you because it's an awesome story. So they met in high school. Actually, they kind of have a country song kind of love story. They met in high school. They met in a Burger King line. Or no, Jack in the Box, fast food line. He kind of said hi to her. She said hi to him. The next thing you know, they were dating, and he was in love, and he was going crazy. Now, when you're in high school, you don't really think that you're going to meet, at least when I was in high school, I never thought I would meet the person I was going to marry. So Greg and his girlfriend would talk all the time. Well, we're going to get married. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And Greg would tell us we were going to have a family. He would tell us we've already picked out names. We know how many kids we want. You see, that's the kind of life that Greg wanted. Greg grew up in a very chaotic house. His mother was divorced, and Greg had men coming in and out, in and out. And he never really had a strong male role. So one of the things that Greg always wanted in his life was a family. He wanted to be the kind of dad that he never had. And that's what he used to dream about with his then girlfriend at the time. As I said, they had names picked out, and he would tell me the names. I'd be like, dude, you're 18. Relax. But he was determined. He says, no, this is the absolute one. So they got married shortly after high school, and they decided that they were going to try to have children right away. And they tried, and they tried, and they tried, but were unsuccessful. So they decided to go to the adoption route. That didn't work. And through one mishap or another, and numerous dollars spent, nothing seemed to work. And then Greg's wife suddenly realized, after mortgaging their house to also pay for in vitro fertilization, one failed international adoption, and 13 failed domestic adoptions, Greg's wife realized what the one common denominator was in this entire story. The one problem. She said it was her. She was the one. She was the one who was preventing Greg from having the family that he dreamed about. And so one day she woke up and she just sat Greg down and said very calmly to him, I'm the problem. I'm the reason you can't have a family. a family. So you need to go. I don't want to be the reason that you can't have the family you've always hoped for. And she literally stopped talking to him. She said, you need to move out, you need to find an apartment. He said, no, I'm not going to do that. So she packed up all of her stuff and she moved into the guest room, and she'd come home and she'd slam the door and she'd eat her meals there and she'd watch TV there. And the only time she ever talked to Greg was when she would say something nasty to him. She'd begin to kind of throw darts at him, hoping that something would stick. Telling him that he's not a man, telling him he's not a good provider, telling him what a rotten person he is. Everything she said to him, she tried to drive him away. He said he knew exactly what she was doing, and that just made him cling to her even more. He didn't use that word cling, but said that just made him hold on to her even more. I don't know if you do this or not, but I know a lot of, but I used to do this too. So often when people feel rejected, they tend to reject those around them. Like, I'm going to get you before you get me. My protective mechanism is, I'm not going to let you hurt me, so I will hurt you first. That was kind of her method of operation. That's exactly what she did. But Greg kept trying to tell her. He would pass notes under her door. He would whisper through the door. He would call in the phone messages. He would say in one way or another, don't you get it? You are the family that I've always dreamed of. You're the one that I want to be with. But she had none of it. This went on for about 6 months. Well, about 2 months into her not talking to him, Greg got a call on the phone from one of the adoption agencies, and they told him that they had a child for him. And he said, well, you've got to call my wife. And they said, we've tried. She won't return our calls. She said to call you. And so he spent the next couple of months trying to get this child, trying to reconcile marriage, and never giving up on his wife. She kept rejecting him. She would later say that she thought that she was protecting him. But my friend is a man of strong convictions. And in his mind, he made a commitment to his wife on the day that he got married, that he would be with her no matter what. Through thick and through thin. Long story short, his devotion to her finally paid off. And Greg and his wife were chosen to adopt that little boy. And what I love about their story is when I watch them, when I see them on Facebook or I see them in person or something, when I watch them with this child, it is clear to me that they were meant to be this boy's parents. It's absolutely clear. They adore this little boy, and this little boy adores them. Greg says God wanted that boy to have us as parents. I'm not suggesting that God made them go through all of those adoptions and all of the things that they went through to get to that point. But Greg knows that they were supposed to be that boy's parents. After they reconciled and they had a child, about 3 months later, Greg's wife got pregnant. And now they have 2 kids. All because Greg didn't give up. All because he knew he had a loved one, and he knew that no matter what she said, he was not going to give up on her. We don't always get a real good sense of timing from the Bible, but I have to believe our story this morning about Naomi trying to get rid of her daughters-in-law isn't as quick as it reads. Because we only have a couple of lines in our reading today that talk about Naomi trying to reject her daughters-in-law. But I think this is the biggest point in the story, is Ruth deciding to stick with her no matter what storms come. Naomi tells Ruth, and Naomi continues, she tells Ruth, look, your sister-in-law is going, Oprah's going, she's leaving, you should go too. But Ruth's love and compassion for her mother-in-law is what drives her to cling to Naomi. And after trying to get rid of Ruth time and time again, finally Ruth comes up with the perfect line to shut Naomi up, and it's the line from our reading today. It says, do not press me to leave you or turn back from following you. Where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die. There I will be buried. May the Lord do thus and so to me, and more as well, even if death parts me from you. Translation, not going anywhere. I'm committed to you. I'm clinging to you. Now that line, your people shall be my people, is a line that many people use for their wedding. Did anybody have that line in their wedding? Okay, we had a couple at 8 o'clock. But a lot of folks like that line, your people will be my people, I will cling to you. And I think it's a beautiful line for a wedding because it talks about the bringing together of 2 families. But I think these verses are even more beautiful when they're properly placed in the story of Ruth and Naomi. I think these words are more powerful when they're said in the midst of a storm like the one these 2 women are going through. Ruth telling Naomi, you're not getting rid of me. Naomi, I don't care how many times you tell me to go the other way, I'm not going. Think about it for a second. Who is it that you cling to? What is it in this life that is more important than the relationships you have with your loved ones, with your family and your friends? It's not material things, it's not power, it's not money, it's not reputation. Maybe those things are important to you, but they're not eternal to you. We aren't linked together to love one another because of the material things that we have. We're linked together because of love. Not the wedding day kind of love, everything is perfect, everything is great all the time, but the kind of love that says, no matter what happens, no matter where we go. The kind of love that says, no matter how bad things get, I'm not giving up on you. Even if it comes to the point where you try to make me give up on you, I'm not going to. The kind of love that says, you can ignore me, hurt me, reject me, and I still love you. It's the kind of love that says, once I've got you, you're mine. It's the kind of love that says, you can throw rocks at me, spit on me, deny me, watch me nailed to a cross, and scatter at the time of my death. Even then, I'm not giving up on you. Are you seeing the kind of role that Ruth plays in this Old Testament story? Ruth, this foreigner, this Moabite woman, is the example of God's love and devotion to us. That's one of the ways that we try to live out our mission statement at Christ Lutheran Church, when we say we want to experience Jesus and live like Jesus. If you want to live like Jesus, then love like Jesus. And be dedicated to those around you like he was to those around him. Now, in the words of Paul Harvey, the rest of the story. Ruth clings to Naomi and is dedicated to her. Ruth goes back to Bethlehem with Naomi, and Ruth begins to work for Naomi's cousin Boaz. Long story short, they meet, they end up getting married, and they have children. Remember last week when I read from the lineage of Jesus from Matthew? I told you I was going to do it again. I'm going to read it one more time. And this time I don't have it up on the screen for the very simple reason that I forgot to put it up. But listen again to the names that are read. This is the genealogy of Jesus the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham was the father of Isaac, Isaac the father of Jacob, Jacob the father of Judah and his brothers, Judah the father of Perez and Zariah, whose mother was Tamar, Perez the father of Hezron, Hezron the father of Ram, Ram the father of Amminadab, Amminadab the father of Nahshon, Nahshon the father of Solomon, Solomon the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab, Boaz the father of Obed, whose mother was Ruth, Obed the father of Jesse, and Jesse the father of King David. So there's Ruth, right in the lineage of Jesus. Without the dedication of Ruth and her willingness to stay at Naomi's side, even in the face of rejection, even with Naomi saying, get away from me, I'm toxic. Without any of that, without Ruth sticking and clinging to Naomi, we don't get to King David. And we then don't get to Jesus. Sisters and brothers, may you love as Ruth loved, with an unwavering devotion to those around you. And whether you're a Naomi shutting people out, or Ruth clinging to a loved one who won't let you in, may you look for God in God's story. Amen. May the peace of the Lord be with you always. Please share that peace with one another.